Before we start this episode, we're reminding you that the episode History of the Universe is coming on May 10th, 2025. It's going to be a long episode covering all of history, from the start of the universe to the Middle Ages, to the French Revolution and to the present, covering everything in between. Now, let's begin this episode. Welcome to Kids Learning Lab, a learning podcast made just for kids. This episode is going to be about World War I, also known as the Great War. Parents and guardians, if you don't want your children to hear this episode, you can easily skip it by pressing the skip button wherever you're listening. Or you can fast forward to the next episode. If you want to hear this episode, it's totally fine. It just might be a little scary. World War I started a long time ago. Let's go back all the way to 1914. You live in the United States of America during the year 1914 in New York City. It's June 28th. You're 22 years old and you work at the local textile mill, a factory. It's 3 o'clock and you've just been given a break from work. You go downstairs and go to the local cafe. You sit down as you read the newspaper. At the top of the newspaper, you see Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated in Serbia. You continue reading the newspaper to learn more. You realize that the Archduke was the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, an empire, and when he visited Serbia, a man shot and killed him. He was a Serbian nationalist, and many Serbians were angry that Austria-Hungary had taken over Bosnia, a land that Serbia had wanted. Fast forward a week, and you're back at the cafe, reading the newspaper. You read about how Russia is supporting Serbia, and that the assassination of the Archduke caused a war to break out in Europe. You learn that France, Britain, and Italy have joined Serbia's side as well, calling themselves the Allies. You also read that Austria-Hungary is allied with Germany, and they call themselves the Dual Alliance, or the Central Powers. Let's jump out of New York and start talking about the key points of any war. Battles. The first offensive was a German siege through Belgium. Belgium, a neutral country, was not allied with either side. However, Germany took this as an opportunity to break through France's defenses on the French-German border, because the protection on the German-Belgian and Belgian-French borders was weak. They happily marched through Belgium, but were surprised when Belgium put up a fight. However, Germany was much stronger and passed through Belgium easily. They burned everything in their path, including old libraries with thousands of books from the Middle Ages. On the other side, Germany was fighting hard Russian attacks. But there was one issue with the Russians' plan. They actually sent messages over telegrams uncoded, meaning the Germans knew their battle plans. They could now secretly go around them and hit them from the back. On the Western Front, German forces were getting close to Paris. The French had to burn up everything in their path, railroads, roads, for fear that Germans could use them. They also barricaded entrances to Paris, even the sewers. However, the Germans had another tactic: airplanes. They bombed Paris. The French knew this because their planes were used as spy planes. The British were also helping the French fight the Germans near Paris, and their forces were called the British Expeditionary Forces, BEF, or BEEF for short. Here's a funny part of the war. The French needed reinforcements to fight the Germans, and since they were out of carriages or cars, they used Paris taxi cabs to deliver reinforcements. They loaded 6,000 troops into 600 taxis, with 10 soldiers in each cab. Imagine being a soldier and getting delivered to the battle in a taxi cab. Now, here comes a new war technology: trenches. World War I was the first war to use trench warfare. Trench warfare is when two enemies dig long pits in the ground, which they lived in. There was about a half a mile between the two trenches. and the soldiers would try to live in the trench. The area between the two trenches was called no man's land. Each side would try to launch artillery shells and also fire guns, and dodge the opponent's bullets, all while staying in that little trench. Sometimes, trenches would have support trenches behind the main trenches, and trenches were built in a zigzag pattern so an enemy couldn't stand at the end of a trench and fire a gun down the end, hitting everyone. But trench life was miserable. Diseases and rats made people sick. Dead bodies lined the sides of the trenches. There were no toilets, and human waste made the trench stink. People hated it, but it was their only option. In Belgium, some Germans were still there. The Belgians decided to open the dams at Antwerp, Belgium, creating a mile-long river that the Germans couldn't cross. Both sides of the war kept digging the trenches on the Western Front, so far that they almost reached Belgium. The last city between the ports of France and the Germans was Ypres, spelled Y-P-R-E-S. Funny spelling, right? The First Battle of Ypres was a big battle and had so many different countries. Troops from the following countries fought at the Battle of Ypres: Belgium, France, Britain, India, Canada, Australia, and Germany. It caused complete devastation in Ypres. The entire British expeditionary force was killed in battle. On the other side of the map, Austria-Hungary invaded Serbia. However, the empire faced devastating losses, but Serbia didn't lose any less either. Troops came from every corner of the British Empire: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Senegal, and India, which was already at Ypres. The Ottoman Empire also joined the Central Powers. Then, a big turning point in the war came. The Germans had just developed a new submarine, the Untersee boat, or the U-boat. It went under the water and came up, smashing whatever ship was above it. One German U-boat sank the RMS Lusitania, a passenger ship. The sinking killed over 1,000 people, including 128 Americans, and America hadn't even joined the war yet. Before long, both sides were using poison gas, a gas that inflates your lungs, making you drown, even on land. Also, Germany began putting explosives in the water, mines. Whenever a ship would touch a mine, it would explode. On the Eastern Front, the Russians began to run out of supplies. Germany noticed this disadvantage and teamed up with Austria-Hungary to push Russia back. Russia was pushed hundreds of miles back, and Germany gained a lot of new land. On the southern side, Austria-Hungary fought Italy. Austria-Hungary won an easy victory. Austria-Hungary also attacked Serbia and brought Germany as an ally. Bulgaria joined the fight too. Britain supported Serbia. In that battle, a lot of Serbians died. Serbia lost. At this time, 1/6 of Serbia's population was killed in that battle. The trench armies on the Western Front are now in for their second year. In the French town of Verdun, the French had forts. However, since the Germans never attacked there, they moved all the weapons elsewhere. The Germans noticed this, however, and attacked at Verdun. The Battle of Jutland was a sea battle, and it involved the Germans and British trying to sink each other's ships. Both sides declared victory. At Verdun, the British sent troops to aid the French. It was the largest British army yet, 500,000 soldiers. Also, World War I was the first war to use tanks. They're called tanks because when the British factories were making them, they kind of looked like huge water tanks. At the Somme River, the British Expeditionary Force was building bombs under the no man's land between the trenches. When they exploded the bombs, they captured almost all the Germans. On the Eastern Front, Russia teamed up with Romania to attack Austria-Hungary. It was the biggest Russian victory of the war, with over 1 million Austria-Hungarian deaths. At this point of the war, there were so many deaths on each side that it was impossible to count. The French had a new plan: to push back the Germans by attacking with their biggest force. It worked, but the Germans held strong at their second line of defense, only being pushed back a little. However, a major player was about to enter the war. Germany sent a note to Mexico by a telegram that was intercepted by British forces and sent to the United States. In this note, the Zimmerman Note, Germany asked Mexico to ally with them, and if they attacked the U.S., they would get part of the country. The president at the time, Woodrow Wilson, was outraged and asked the U.S. Congress to declare war on Germany. The U.S. joined the Allied forces. However, the American Expeditionary Forces commander, John J. Pershing, decided that they needed training before fighting. So after 6 months of training, they were sent under the American flag to the Western Front to aid France and Britain. However, in Russia, there was an uprising against the Russian ruler, and a new group took over the government. They made Russia pull out of the war by signing treaties with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Then, a new group called the Bolsheviks took over the new government. At this point of the war, both sides began using airplanes. Germans tried using Zeppelins, but they were easily shot down. So both sides began using bomber planes to bomb cities and towns. When the Americans finally arrived to France, they won their first victory at the Battle of Cantigny. Even some Canadians joined the fight and captured Germans in the trench still eating breakfast. Germans started using poison gas again. However, in France, an American bomber plane started bombing the American troops. The only hope they had was 3 pigeons. They could send messages. They sent the first pigeon, but it was shot down by the Germans. They sent another pigeon. It was also shot down. They sent the last one, Cher Ami, and it was shot too. But Cher Ami kept flying and flew all the way to the American base and, well, the bombing stopped. The Central Powers was close to defeat. The Empire of Austria-Hungary surrendered. The Ottoman Empire surrendered. Bulgaria surrendered. An armistice was signed with Germany. At November 11, 1918, at 11 a.m., the firing would stop. And so it did. This war was called the Great War, the war to end all wars, even though it didn't. World War II is still about to come. 15 million soldiers were wounded. 9 million soldiers died. The end. Thanks for listening. Remember, you can get 25% off your first month of a Kids Learning Lab subscription by using code SPRING. Or you can sign up for a free subscription by going to news.kidslearninglab.com. Contact us at kidslearninglab.com/contact or hello@kidslearninglab.com. See my coding projects, which is on the new website, at projects.kidslearninglab.com. Thanks for listening.